When we talk about comprehensive sexuality education, we're talking about a really wide range of subjects, of topics, and of themes.
Comprehensive sexuality education will be key to ensure that the world can reach the SDGs, including SDG 3 on health, SDG 4 on education, and 5 on gender equality.
Young people have a right to information that's not only life-saving, but is going to add to their ability to have a healthy, pleasurable sexuality.
Investing in sexual and reproductive health and rights, including through comprehensive sexuality education, unleashes a girl and woman's potential.
Comprehensive sexuality education also promotes nonviolence.
In the last 2 decades, there has been an aggressive push for what its advocates call comprehensive sexuality education to be made mandatory in classrooms across the world.
Aya lives in a country where sexuality education is mandatory. Around 85% of countries have policies, laws, or legal frameworks that support the delivery of sexuality education.
The Guttmacher Institute, which tracks sex education policy, reports that 11 states in the U.S. currently mandate comprehensive sexuality education in all schools. So what exactly is comprehensive sexuality education? The requirements of comprehensive sexuality education are defined nationally in the U.S. by the National Sex Education Standards created by SECUS and the Future of Sex Education, and SECUS's guidelines for comprehensive sexuality education, as well as internationally by the IPPF Framework for Comprehensive Sexuality Education, created by the International Planned Parenthood Federation, and the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, released by UNESCO and several other UN agencies, including the World Health Organization. And just like pedophilia advocacy group Prostasia uses the language of sex positivity and human rights to justify their advocacy for pedophiles, all 3 sets of official sex education guidelines base their approach in sex positivity and human rights. In order to be sex positive, sex education should emphasize sexual expression, sexual fulfillment, and pleasure. Children should be encouraged to engage in sexual behavior, and the International Planned Parenthood Federation suggests reclaiming some of the language used within the commercial sex industry in order to represent safe sex as fun and pleasurable. And how do these institutions apply the concept of human rights to their sex education standards? The UN guidelines declare that all children have a human right to their version of comprehensive sexuality education, and cite the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. While also citing the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, the International Planned Parenthood Federation framework declares the right of all young people to enjoy sex and express their sexuality in the way that they choose. The IPPF expands on this concept in Sexual Rights, an IPPF declaration, stating that according to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, children of all ages have sexual rights, regardless of what those pesky laws have to say about it. Any kind of distinction, exclusion, or restriction based on age must be prohibited. Accordingly, the right to seek and express sexual pleasure at any time must not be denied to any child, including the right to choose their sexual partners in order to experience their full sexual potential and pleasure. The UN guidelines stress the importance of the transformative nature of comprehensive sexuality education. By the end of the UN program, students will be able to explain how their sexual values differ from those of their parents. In order to overcome any resistance to the program, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child states that comprehensive sexuality education should be part of the mandatory school curriculum. Acknowledging the sensitive and sometimes controversial nature of comprehensive sexuality education, The UN stresses the importance of having supportive and inclusive laws and policies in place, demonstrating that the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education is a matter of institutional policy, rather than the personal choice of individuals. And IPPF declares that states are required to take measures that prevent third parties, aka parents and other concerned community members, from interfering with the sexual rights of children. So what is included in the sex education standards that have been declared the human right of all children, and are rapidly being made mandatory across the world? By ages 9 to 12, the UN standards require a porn literacy program, such as the one created by Jewish social scientist Emily Rothman. And by ages 12 through 15, students are required to express their feelings about using porn. SIECUS also suggests that by grades 6 to 8, students should be discussing pornography and its impacts in the classroom. Both the UN and SIECUS standards require lessons on the genitals by age 5 to 8. This is where sex educators often first introduce the concepts of pleasure and masturbation to the children.
Hey, how come my penis gets big sometimes and points up in the air?
That's called an erection.
Sometimes I touch my penis because it feels nice. Is that okay?
Sometimes, when I'm in my bath or when Mom puts me to bed, I touch my vulva.
You have a clitoris there, Kayla. And yes, it's okay to touch your clitoris. And Keith, it's okay to touch your penis. It's okay to touch yourself and see how different body parts feel, but it's best to only do it in private.
SIECUS's guidelines for comprehensive sexuality education require that children ages 5 to 8 be taught that both boys and girls have body parts that feel good when touched, and that touching and rubbing one's own genitals to feel good is called masturbation, with masturbation being a key topic that is built upon with each successive age group. The UN model includes instruction on masturbation by ages 9 to 12. Also by ages 9 to 12, the UN suggests children should be taught the advantages of becoming sexually active. Throughout all of the sex ed guidelines, frequent reference is made to the importance of children having unrestricted access to information regarding their sexuality. And exactly what kind of information is being provided to them through the school system? That's where the American Library Association comes in.
I think all of us across the country, no matter what state you're from, we're all facing challenges to intellectual freedom. It's been an unprecedented time. We've all dealt with things that I think we did not expect when we entered the profession of school librarianship.
The level of attacks and actions being taken legislatively, locally, it's just been so intense for everyone. And even
through its American Association of School Librarians, the ALA wields enormous influence over what books and other materials are made available and used in public schools, holding public school libraries to the ALA's extreme standards of intellectual freedom regarding sexual material being available to children of any age.
Hi, my name is Knox Zajac. I'm 11 years old and I go to Wyndham Middle School. I'm a 6th grader. I was in the library and this book was on a stand. I'd like to read you a page. My back over my hips as I ask if we should take our clothes off. And he's saying yes before I finish my sentence. He's pulling off my t-shirt, laughing when I can't undo his shirt buttons. He's undoing my belt. I'm reaching into his bedside drawer for a condom. We're kissing. Again, we're rolling over. Obviously, you can see where this is going. I don't know if it's because we're feeling especially emotional or just tired, or these past couple of weeks have been too much. But this reminds me so much of the first time we had sex. We were both fucking terrified, and the whole thing was kind of terrible because we didn't know what we were doing. But it was good too, so good, because we were a mess of emotions, and we were scared and excited, and everything felt new. So this sort of feels like that. Nick touches me like he's scared that any minute. Now, this book was at my middle school, and it was on a stand. When I rented it out to show my dad it, the librarian asked if I wanted more and if I wanted a graphic novel version.
So we hear so much about diversity, inclusion, and equity, and how it's one of the main thrusts, main objectives of the school board and the school district. we don't often see specific examples of what diversity, inclusion, and equity looks like, though. So today I brought an excellent representation. This is like the archetype of diversity, inclusion, and equity material that it's one of the books that was just recently purchased for our libraries. It's in Romig and Bartlett. It's called Let's Talk About It by Erica Moen. So it's got one of the chapters in here is about sexting. And I'll just read some of the text here. So before you start sending your naughty masterpieces around the world, take some time to get friendly with photo editing software and apps. Digital photos are permanent and impossible to retract once they're out there. So keep your recognizable features out of them before you share them. This is a book for kids. Don't forget to crop out your face, hide your birthmarks and scars, and edit out your piercings and tattoos. And don't forget to tell your sweetie how hot they look. Let them know you appreciate the little gift they've sent you.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes?
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you at this point. It sounds like you have a concern about a book. I'd be glad to connect you to the superintendent and their team to go through the appropriate process.
I'd appreciate if you don't interrupt my time.
Mr. McDonald, I've asked you to defer to the superintendent and their team if you have a concern about a book. We have a procedure and a process and a team ready to assist you if you'd like.
I don't understand how it's appropriate for kids and it's not appropriate for the school board. I didn't even say a bad word. It feels a lot like you don't want parents to be seeing what's given to the kids.
Next, we go to recognition of visitors and public forum.
I'm going to read to you several different passages from a book titled Him by Serena Bowen that the district made available for students to check out in room Hines 104, an English classroom. I want to know how and why this book was ever allowed in our school, more specifically that process that was just discussed and how books are approved. I sucked him deeper into my mouth, almost to the base, and just when he moaned, I released him, gliding my tongue along the long, hard length of him. A few seconds later, he groaned. The husky sound vibrated against my lips as he went still, thrust deep, and came inside my mouth while I swallowed up every last drop. I teased and caressed for several long moments before slipping my finger inside. This time, I'm able to ease in. Just the tip, but holy hell, the pressure is incredible. He's hot and tight, squeezing me into oblivion. Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. It's all he seems capable of saying as my cock tunnels deeper. I hope these examples serve as a wake-up call to many other parents and community members in this district. And let me be the first to ask you again, who, how, when, and why?
All right, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
I want to make sure that we can schedule something to discuss the horrible book that was shared with us earlier.
Absolutely. I'll share with the board from what I understand that book, we have one of them in the collection. It has never been checked out and is currently not in circulation. So
Well, then it should be a really easy thing to do.
I'm just letting you know that's where we are right now with that. It doesn't mean that.
But how did it get to there? I mean, these are questions. We've all got questions. But we need to discuss.
Have a discussion.
What we are doing with this book and how
it even got into our district.
Okay, well, again.
Because if we discuss what potentially adding it to February 27th agenda, it's January 23rd. We've got essentially a pornographic item in the school district. So we're going to wait over 30 days to have this on the agenda of the meeting on the 27th. I'm just saying that our discussion, is it going to be to put it on the agenda, or is it going to be around what is happening with this and how is this going to be handled?
So going back to earlier, a lot of this discussion we're having right now seems to ignore the process that's on the website. It's there for everybody to see.
Okay, so are you telling me that's an
instruct,
like, what are we teaching our children?
That would be something where there would need to be some sort of intervention, because that can't be a book for learning and teaching in our school. That's not.
And
we don't want to
there's
be.
a process for it that make it.
Okay.
As the superintendent, don't you have the power to go and pull that off the shelf until we can figure this out and come up with time to discuss this?
And that may very well
because this is a pornographic book that does not meet here.
That may very well be part of the process.
Okay. So let's, come up with a solution here.
It's like, can we just pull it? I like, what, you get to pull it. You get to pull it, guys. Unbelievable. There doesn't need to be a process for you to pull out a hardcore pornography book. Just pull the book and then we can discuss it. And if we all agree that it needs to be in the district, then we let it be in the district. I will not be voting for that book to be in this district. But I'm only one.
It's currently not in circulation.
Does that mean it's in your office?
It's not in my office.
I would like to know where the book is then. I would like to see it in a dumpster fire, but.
I understand that, Jen. We need to move on from
It's available on the website.
Particular focus is given to promoting LGBTQ plus materials in school libraries. In defending intellectual freedom, LGBTQ plus materials in school libraries, the American Association of School Librarians teaches school librarians that in order to keep with professional library ethics as defined by the ALA, they must actively seek out LGBTQ plus materials to be included in library collections and promoted to all students in every book display in the school library, regardless of the wishes of school administration or the community, and teaches them how to defend books that are challenged by the public. The ALA provides further guidance as to what kind of book should be included and displayed in school libraries, with resources such as its LGBTQIA+ Books for Children and Teens, and the LGBTQIA+ Resources for Children, a bibliography, released by the ALA's Rainbow Roundtable, originally created by gay Orthodox Jew Israel Fishman, as the Task Force on Gay Liberation.
For gay people, for queers.
Both resources contain dozens of gay and trans-themed materials, which are targeted at very young children, including selections from Speaking for Ourselves, Stories by Jewish Lesbians, and LGBTQIA+ Books for Children and Teens. The ALA stresses the importance of including frequently challenged books in school libraries, and names as two examples, Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe, and Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison. Both books have been promoted by the ALA for inclusion in school libraries by receiving the ALA's Alex Award, which is given to books that were written for adults but have special appeal to teenagers, ages 12 to 18. And because both books have been frequently challenged in schools due to their sexual content, they have both been included in the ALA's annual Top 10 Most Challenged Books list, further promoting their inclusion in school library collections on the grounds of intellectual freedom. According to Mandy Peterson of the Nebraska School Librarians Association, school librarians rely heavily on ALA recommendations when making book acquisition choices, checking the ALA awards list on the day they come out, resulting in books like Lawn Boy quickly finding its way into school libraries across America. A recurring topic in Lawn Boy is a gay sex encounter between two 10-year-old boys.
In fourth grade, at a church youth group meeting, out in the bushes behind the parsonage, I touched Doug Goebel's dick, and he touched mine. In fact, there were even some mouths involved. What if I told you I touched another guy's dick? I said. What if I told you I sucked it? I was 10 years old, but it's true. I put Doug Goebel's dick in my mouth. All I could think about while he was chatting me up over the rim of his cappuccino was his little salamander between my fourth grade fingers, rapidly engorging with blood.
And Gender Queer, which has been honored annually by the ALA as the most challenged book since 2021, tells the story of the author as a transgender teenager, a girl who identifies as a boy, and while directly appealing to young audiences with its illustrated graphic novel format and a focus on adolescence, it contains graphic depictions of the author's sexual experiences, including oral sex involving a strap-on dildo, and a 14-year-old version of the author sexually fantasizing about an ancient Greek depiction of a sexual relationship between an adult man and an adolescent boy. The ALA also recommends including plenty of nonfiction titles about the LGBT experience in school library selections. One such example is This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, which has the official stamp of approval from the ALA's Rainbow Roundtable, and has been featured on the ALA's Top 10 Most Challenged Book list since 2021. The book is aimed at middle schoolers aged 11 to 14, and with the ALA's support, has been included in school libraries across America.
The book in question, called This Book is Gay, Lafita was one of dozens of people who spoke out at a school board meeting over a book challenge at Pierce Middle School. A school-based committee decided to keep the book in the school's library, and after an appeal, a district-level committee upheld that decision.
In a chapter called The Ins and Outs of Gay Sex, middle schoolers are taught the best methods of performing boy-on-boy sex, girl-on-girl sex, and trans sex. Gay promiscuity is celebrated as a rebellion against heteronormative values, and the children are taught how to use sex apps like Grindr to arrange casual sex with gay men and get invited to gay orgies, but are warned that if they are using Grindr while underage, they should not send sexual pictures of themselves due to those pesky child pornography laws. While they may be some of the most challenged materials, these titles are just a tiny sample of the obscene materials being pumped into schools every day. And a Washington Post report on parent attempts to remove Lomboy from school libraries in 2021 and 2022 found that half of the challenges were simply ignored. And of the other half of cases that school districts reviewed, at least 63% resulted in the book remaining in school libraries. After all, the gay sex acts contained in these challenge books are already being taught to children as part of comprehensive sexuality education. By ages 5 to 8 in the UN model, the concept of showing love and care for others through sexual behaviors is introduced, expanded on by ages 9 to 12, with lists of ways human beings feel pleasure from sexual contact, while stressing that discrimination against same-sex attraction is wrong. Continued in ages 12 through 15, with further exploration of sexual expression, and instilling that all sexual feelings, fantasies, and desires are natural and not shameful. The SICA standards are a bit more explicit about what is meant by this. By grades 6 to 8, children must be able to define the wide range of sexual orientations and identities, including two-spirit and pansexual, while mastering their knowledge of things like anal sex and dental dams. And for an example of what Planned Parenthood feels is appropriate for children, we have Queering Sex Ed, a project of Planned Parenthood Toronto, designed to develop a sex ed resource with and for LGBTQ youth. We want to reframe the sex that we have and the sex that we want to have as something positive. We want to see the kind of sex we have and want to have reflected in curriculum. In their resource titled Sex Acts That Don't Get Enough Play, Queering Sex Ed provides a recipe book of sex acts that they believe youths should be engaging in more often, including anal, bondage, rimming, muffing, and fisting. Children are not only required to learn about such obscene behaviors in school, in order to be inclusive of all sexual orientations and gender identities, but are also forced to advocate for them. At every level of sexuality education, beginning in grades 3 to 5, advocacy is a major requirement, and all students must prove themselves as dedicated LGBTQ activists. Beginning in kindergarten, children are taught the core concept of gender identity and the range of ways people express their gender, beginning them on the transgender journey. By grades 3 to 5, they must define and explain differences between cisgender, transgender, gender non-binary, gender expansive, and gender identity, while understanding that sex assigned at birth is completely separate from gender identity. At the same time they are introduced to the celebrated transgender identity and lifestyle, the children, at ages 8 to 10, are taught about the role of hormones and the potential role of hormone blockers for transgender children. Not coincidentally, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, which releases global guidelines on transgender treatment, recommends starting gender questioning children on puberty blockers as early as age 8. disrupting their body's natural processes of puberty so that they have time to explore their gender identity. But medically blocking a child's puberty is just the first step on their transition journey, and soon they will need to be started on cross-gender hormones. By ages 12 to 15 in the SIECUS guidelines, students are taught that some transgender individuals may take hormones or have surgery to alter their bodies to match their gender identity. In this way, educational institutions and health associations work hand in hand to ensure that the producers of such transgender drugs receive lifelong customers beginning in childhood. And who produces transgender drugs for children? In a 2018 article for gay magazine Dem, Israeli-born Jew and transgender anti-Israel activist Itta Segev writes that a large part of the trans community in the U.S. is being forced to choose between our life-affirming transitions and our Palestinian siblings' demand for freedom. As Segev found out after deciding to medically transition, the transgender hormone market in the U.S. is dominated by Israeli pharmaceutical company Teva. Upon further investigation, Segev found that Israeli laws and regulations have enabled Teva to exponentially grow, acquiring a monopoly over production and distribution of cross-gender hormones in the U.S., a fact which Teva actively tries to hide. And as another Jewish activist writes for Jewish outlet Vashti Media, access to puberty blockers is a Jewish issue. In 2022, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health lowered many of its minimum age requirements for transgender treatments in a new set of guidelines, lowering the age for introducing cross-gender hormones from 16 to 14, breast removal for trans boys from 17 to 15, and genital surgeries such as testicle removal from age 18 to 17. Only months later, the association would decide to get rid of age restrictions for these procedures altogether, removing such arbitrary boundaries, so that every transgender and gender diverse adolescent can have their appropriate medical needs met at the appropriate time.
So female to male. So you have a kid, any kid comes to you. I don't care whether you are internal medicine or family medicine or gyne, it doesn't matter. Kid comes to you and says, I want to transition. And they are pre-pubertal. They are not ready for hormones, so to speak. They wouldn't naturally be making their own. Just give them Lupron. All you do is you press pause on puberty, and it just stops. They stop growing breasts, their penis gets no bigger, their testicles get no bigger, they don't get any facial hair. It's just, you keep them in kid stage, pause, and you give them time. So I block these kids. I say, yep, you're blocked. Your hormones are blocked. Go to gender therapy, and they go. They come back, we start them on HRT. When is the age-appropriate time, which is effectively puberty. All right, so I do something unusual. There are two types of genital surgery for trans men. One is called a phalloplasty, where we create a neopenis, and the other is a metoidoplasty. It used to be you can basically have your penis or feel it too. That is no longer the case. There are some new surgeries that actually give you a sensory phallus, but for the longest time, that was basically your options. We basically sever the clitoris, pull it out, and then more or less attach it there, and it becomes sort of a small penis. And then there's testicular implants that can be placed into the labia, and there's a vaginectomy. The vagina canal is closed, and this is what you get. I'm able to achieve considerably greater growth than other doctors because I dreamed up this idea of using incredibly concentrated testosterone directly to the clitoris. The other reason is that I do it is on my male to female kids who were blocked. They don't really grow much of a penis because they don't have the testosterone to make it grow. So there's a very famous transgender girl named Jazz Jennings who went through her whole surgery thing and outline, and the biggest complication she had was her vagina was about this deep. And it was because Jazz had never been allowed to go through regular puberty, which means that she had more or less been a toddler penis. It never grew any, and that's what they were able to use to make the tissue to do the neovagina. So as funny as it is to say, about 6 months before any of my patients go for gender-affirming surgery, I start slathering them up with 0.5% testosterone every day. This will make the biggest, strongest penis possible to go into battle that you're going to use to turn into a neovagina. It's very important to do this because they've often spent 4, 5, 10 years on blockers and have experienced significant genital atrophy as a result. I actually use a compounded weak testosterone, a 0.5% or weaker, on the penises of transgender women. A lot of times the corpora, the internal structure, doesn't get any smaller. That stays the same, but the skin atrophies. So you end up with like an overwrapped kielbasa. So when they get an erection, it is extremely painful and the skin can split.
I'm gonna kill myself!
And while the major institutions of the mainstream medical establishment recommend such drastic medical and surgical procedures for minors purely for their life-saving mental health benefits, new research in the field suggests that the majority of children who experience mental health changes after undergoing gender hormone therapy experience significant deterioration in their mental health. But encouraged and enabled by educational policy, the medical establishment, and the culture industry, children can increasingly make these life-altering decisions for themselves. In liberal states like Oregon, children as young as 15 can choose to undergo procedures such as hormone treatment and breast removals without parental consent. And in many states, the government can seize custody of transgender children if it is found that their parents are not providing sufficient gender-affirming care. One such case took place in Appomattox County, Virginia, where 8th grade girl Sage Blair attended a small school in which all of her female classmates identified as bi, trans, or lesbian. By the time she began attending Appomattox County High School in 2021, Sage had begun to identify as a transgender boy named Draco.
Michelle Blair is suing her local school district, saying staff there secretly transitioned her daughter.
And it was verbal, physical, sexually harassed with constant threats of rape by the male classmates. But despite this, the school encouraged her to use the boys' bathroom.
Blair's daughter Sage had a history of mental health issues, including depression, eating disorders, self-harm, and hallucinations, and Blair informed the school of it prior to any of the incidents. However, the school pursued a social transition for Sage, behind the back of her parents, according to the lawsuit filed by the Child and Parent Rights Campaign. Bernadette Broyles, Blair's attorney, told Washington Examiner, Sage ran away from home due to severe bullying and harassment at school.
The school officials were encouraging to use the boys' bathroom, even though they knew she was being threatened with sexual assault. She perceived herself that she wasn't safe, and she runs away from home. And she runs into the arms of a waiting pedophile who encounters her, rapes her, traffics her to other men, and takes her across state lines into Washington, D.C., and then ultimately into Maryland.
The nightmare should have ended there, but the Baltimore juvenile court system took custody of the young girl. Area public defender Anissa Khan concluded the Blairs were not, quote, sufficiently affirming of her new identity.
Anissa Khan would brag to Sage about her intention to use her case to establish case law for the right of states to seize custody of transgender children, with the hopes of getting the case before the Supreme Court.
While in custody, Sage was put into a boys' juvenile facility where she was again sexually assaulted, exposed to drugs, and denied medical and mental health care.
With a 100-pound girl, what do you think happens in this facility? She's again sexually assaulted. She runs away, and then again is found by yet another pedophile who traffics her more and takes her into Texas. Texas finally has the wisdom to return her to her parents. This is the horror that this child went through.
Sage's grandmother has now filed a lawsuit against Anissa Khan, the Appomattox County School Board, and others involved in endangering her child. Unfortunately, this lawsuit is unlikely to go anywhere, because it seems that at every step, the defendants were simply following existing laws and procedures regarding transgender children. The horrifying sex trafficking and torture of 14-year-old Sage Blair was the result of institutional policy rather than the choices of individuals. Because of the rampant institutional promotion, transgenderism has exploded among the population within a short amount of time. From 2006 to 2016, the percentage of U.S. adults identifying as transgender doubled from 0.3% of the population to 0.6% of the population. And by 2024, this number had doubled again to 1.14%. with the most rapid growth taking place among the younger generations. From 2020 to 2021, the number of 6 to 17-year-olds diagnosed with gender dysphoria doubled. And a 2022 study found that youth ages 13 to 17 comprised about 18% of the transgender identified population in the U.S., up from 10% previously. Recent studies have found that LGBTQ identification has consistently doubled with every single generation, beginning with the baby boomers, with almost 1/3 of Gen Z identifying as some form of LGBTQ. And a 2022 survey found that among 13 to 24-year-olds identifying as LGBTQ, half of them identified as transgender or non-binary. This transgender explosion is overseen and championed by U.S. government medical officials, such as transgender Jew Rachel Levine, who has served as U.S. Assistant Secretary for Health since 2021, and has used his position to advocate for transgender experiments on children.
Now they're suffering politically motivated attacks through state actions against these vulnerable transgender youth. This is not based upon data. These actions are politically motivated, and so we really want to base our treatment and to affirm and to support and empower these youth, not to limit their participation in activities in sports, and even limit their ability to get gender affirmation treatment in their state.
Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office and coming to your office and discussing the particulars of the standards of care for transgender medicine.
As of the making of this video, 25 states have moved to ban transgender procedures for children, but the legality of these bans is set to be determined by a Supreme Court ruling in the fall of 2024. Will the Trump-loaded conservative Supreme Court find in favor of banning transgender experimentation on children? While the issue of transgender children became a major rallying cry for the grassroots GOP base during the COVID era, the policies of conservative and GOP institutions are not determined by the public will, but by a cosmopolitan donor class. In 2012, Jewish billionaire and GOP megadonor Paul Singer formed the American Unity PAC, designed to funnel millions of dollars from Jewish billionaire donors into the coffers of Republican candidates who take pro-gay stances.
In the case of gay rights, my younger son came out to me as gay in 1998 when he was 21 years old. And shortly after some brief discussions, I became very interested in being a funder of gay rights groups. The culmination of that was, and it was really a very highly strategic and well-executed project, was a partnership with the governor of New York, with us and our Democratic friends to make gay marriage legal in New York, which required Republican state senators' help, and we were involved in that.
Other than Singer himself, the PAC's major donors include Jewish billionaires David Tepper, Seth Klarman, and Daniel Loeb. By the 2015-2016 election cycle, the Jewish billionaires have made great progress in converting the GOP to the gay cause, and the party would follow the lead of its 2016 presidential nominee, Donald Trump, in openly embracing gay pride.
People go, they use the bathroom that they feel is appropriate. There has been so little trouble, and the problem with what happened in North Carolina is the strife.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using
any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
In this country, I'm better for women and I'm better for gays. I am better for a lot of people, and I think people are starting to see that.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me. And I have to say, as a Republican, it is so nice to hear you cheering for what I just said. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's me, Lady Maga, and I know a lot of you have been wondering why a drag queen like me would support our president. Let me tell you why I love our president, Donald Trump.
In Red State, Utah, the 4 candidates seeking the nomination spoke about LGBTQ rights at a forum put on by Equality Utah.
I'm a Republican, a Christian, and as anti-woke as you can get. I watched the debate about transgender people and attempts to ban gender-affirming care, and to be candid, I'm appalled. There are Republicans, there are Christians who have transgender children.
Celebrate Pride Month with Fox News. Meet important voices of the LGBTQ plus community and go inside their incredible contributions. Part of America Together on Fox News.
Pride Month continues as we highlight the story of Rylan Whittington, whose journey of transitioning at age 5 has been seen by 7 million people in a family YouTube video.
Indiana's governor has vetoed a bill to ban transgender girls from participating in school sports that match their gender identity.
Governor Mike DeWine announcing he has vetoed House Bill 68, which in part would have banned some gender-affirming care for minors.
And it shows that this new Republican Party, led by Donald Trump, has put his DNA into the party.
I am proud to be gay. I am proud to be a Republican.
After Trump was elected, Paul Singer would successfully lobby for the 2017 appointment of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. In 2020, Gorsuch authored the majority opinion in the landmark case Bostick v. Clayton County, in which the Supreme Court ruled that anything which could be construed as discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity is strictly prohibited under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, setting a precedent that will likely bring the court to overturn the state bans on Israeli transgender hormones being pumped into children across America. So is there any political hope for the protection of children?
Members of the board, my name is Craig Schubert. I'm the mayor of this city. It has come to my attention that your educators are distributing essentially what is child pornography in the classroom. I've spoken to a judge this evening. She's already confirmed that. So I'm going to give you a simple choice. You either choose to resign from this Board of Education or you will be charged. Thank you.
While clips like this tend to go viral and fill many with a false sense of victory, is a cultural shift really taking place? In this instance, no school board members resigned or were arrested. The issue was resolved when one inappropriate material was removed from a classroom, while the policies which led to that material being placed in the classroom to begin with remained unexamined and unchallenged. Despite the narrow and myopic view often sold by conservative media, the attacks on the sexual innocence of children are much larger than one book, one school board, or one political party. We can clearly see a deliberate, coordinated, and well-documented child sexualization policy. It is not a policy emanating from the choices of individuals, but the concentrated power of an entire system. And what defines the system from which these policies emanate? Are we to take seriously the mythologies of liberalism, the notion that we live under a system of freedom and democracy, in which the people hold the true power, In our study of the child sexualization policy, we have seen the clear influence of a certain ruling class, comprised of a tiny ethnic minority, completely alien from the interests of their host population. According to the bizarre pseudoscientific theories of their modern prophets, all children must be initiated into sexual exploration by ages 4 to 6, so that they are less likely to develop what this certain ruling class has defined as mental illness, such as respect for authority, identification with a race or culture, and most evil of all, anti-Semitism. It is on this basis that this certain ruling class has aggressively implemented a policy of child sexualization into all institutions related to child development. As long as their power goes unchallenged, they will continue to mass produce entire generations of sage players. Vulnerable and defenseless children, brainwashed, betrayed, and raped by the very institutions which should be there to protect them. These children have no voice in this system. They rely on responsible adults to advocate for them. And when we advocate for the innocence of children, when we choose the language and ideas we put forward in their defense, we must seriously ask ourselves, are we presenting a true challenge to the system that harms them? Or are we simply feeding into the very narratives by which the system grants itself power and legitimacy?
I strongly suggest that you guys maybe consider what kind of psychological warfare is being played on everyone right now and how it compares to the Holocaust. We're all here in masks. Where's our yellow stars?
I have families that have died in concentration camps, and we are heading there.
All right, the next topic is the CRT. I agree with what both of these people said, but you know what? If you want to talk about racism, if you want to bring it in, then let's bring it in. Let's get to the bottom of it. You're talking about white supremacy. Okay, let's get to the very bottom of it. Every one of these things, the deep state, the cabal, the swamp, the elite, you can't mention it, but I will. There is one race that owns all the pharmaceutical companies, and if you want to bring race into this, it's the Jews.